Hi guys, I'm Chris, and this is an unscheduled episode of Compound and Everything, covering some massive news coming out of the Berkshire Hathaway virtual AGM that just took place a few hours ago. As a few of you may have heard, Berkshire Hathaway looks to have liquidated their positions in all American Airlines. As of December, Berkshire owned 42 million shares in American Airlines, 58 million shares in Delta, 51 million shares in Southwest, and 21 million units in United Airlines. However, in Berkshire's annual meeting today, Warren Buffett has declared that in April he liquidated his positions in all major US airlines. Yes, that is right. Warren Buffett, the Oracle of Omaha, the guy that never sells a stock, has given up on the airline industry. And I guess it's not overly surprising in the grand scheme of things, considering the current pandemic and the, erratic nature of the airline industry in general. But I did find it interesting for Buffett to be selling at a loss, breaking his number one rule, which is never lose money. But as expected, there is an explanation behind this decision. Obviously, in recent news, the airline executives have been calling this pandemic the industry's worst ever crisis and expect the impact to take several years, if not more, to recover from. Last month, American, United, Southwest, and Delta reported their first losses in years, and the US travel demand is now down 95% on the previous year. Now, at one point, Warren Buffett's position in these four airlines was worth near $10 billion. However, at the time of sale, sometime in the last month, Buffett is estimated to have sold these stocks for a total of $3 to $4 billion, which is a huge loss even on Buffett's scale. And I really think that I could see this in Buffett's demeanor on stage. I honestly think he had no intention of selling these companies before the pandemic. And I think it's obvious that nobody, including Buffett, likes to be forced into a position like this where he has to not only sell at a loss, but sell companies that he previously enjoyed owning. So before we get into what Buffett actually said about the sale of these companies, I find it really interesting as to how he managed to pull this off without anybody knowing at all. I mean, these were very large positions in four very large companies, and not a soul seems to have known about this going on until today. Well, if you actually go back a couple of weeks, you'll remember that we were talking about a couple of articles floating around where Buffett had sold some really small stakes in his airline holdings. Those headlines at the time really did get me thinking about, well, why would Buffett sell such a small stake, taking him from something like 10.5% to just under 10%? And a lot of people were speculating it was just simply so he didn't have to report any buying or selling to the SEC. Now, at that time, I didn't believe it was so he could then go and sell that whole holding without having to report it within a certain amount of time. I think that time period is 48 hours, but you probably have to do your own research on that. So under the cover of darkness, Buffett has managed to sell a huge stake, or four huge stakes, in these different companies without alerting any of the other shareholders. Now, I guess that really has two benefits for Buffett. One is that he can get out of this stock without completely tanking the share price, which is what he would have to do if he were to put all these shares on the open market at once. And two is it just gives him a better average sale price. If he can sell at a certain price in all of these companies over a 5 or a 10-day period, it's more likely that he's going to be able to maintain that price across a large amount of sales over a longer period of time, like 2, 3, or potentially 4 weeks. Now, of course, it is going to be very interesting to see what happens next week once the markets have opened, because a lot of people do follow Buffett into positions. And not just that, even if they haven't followed him in, the doubt of knowing that the greatest investor of all time has pulled out from this position would definitely weigh on any holders that were maybe already on the fence. So I guess we're all going to have to be patient and just wait and see what happens over the next couple of weeks with these stocks. My gut feeling is that they're probably going to decline a little bit further. However, that really was a given considering the current travel and economic restrictions at this point in time. So let's get into what Buffett actually said regarding the sale. Now, forgive me here, I'm going to have to read some of these from my laptop as I haven't had a chance to memorize all of these in such a short amount of time. So Buffett started by saying that it turns out he was wrong on his bets on American, Delta, United, and Southwest Airlines. He explained that the business has changed in a very major way over the last couple of months. He went on to say that the world has changed for the airlines, and I don't know how it's changed, and I hope it corrects itself in a reasonably prompt way. He also said, I don't know if Americans have now changed their habits or will change their habits because of the extended period of lockdown. But I think there are certain industries, and unfortunately, I think that the airline industry, amongst others, are really hurt by a forced shutdown by events that are far beyond their control. So when Becky quick clarified this question with Buffett about if he's actually sold all of his holdings in the airlines or just some of them, his response was yes. Just to point out, yes, meaning they're all gone. He has sold every last one of them and he has no intention of buying them anytime soon. He also went on to say, when we sell something, very often it's going to be an entire stake. We don't trim positions. It's just not the way we approach it anymore than if we buy 100% of a business. We're going to sell it down to 90 or 80%. If we like a business, we're going to buy as much of it as we can and keep it as long as we can. He also added, and when we change our mind, we don't take half measures. Buffett then went on to reiterate that he really does admire the airlines and their management teams, but sometimes you just have extremely low probability events like this pandemic that actually happen. And that sometimes just necessitates a quick change in the plan to an investment. He also mentioned that when he bought the airlines, he was getting an attractive amount for our money when investing across those airlines. He said, it turns out I was wrong about the business because of something that was not in any way the fault of our 4 excellent CEOs. He continued to say, I don't know that 3, 4, or 5 years from now, people will fly as many passenger miles as they did last year. Even if 70 or 80% of the airline business returns, he said that carriers could end up with too many planes. Later, he added that an oversupply of airline seats would drive down prices, and it was unclear how long the airlines would have to actually sustain billions of dollars in operating losses due to this pandemic. I guess to break down what Buffett just said, we could use a very basic example. If any of these airlines had, say, 10 aircraft on their books, and they were only using 5 in any given period, they would still need to maintain and repay the cost of purchasing those 5 other aircrafts. That would be an incredibly difficult process and very unsustainable in the short term. Not to mention some airlines locally here in Australia, like Virgin Australia, were already in a difficult position before having to deal with these new restrictions. Buffett also briefly touched on the pandemic itself and the effect that he believes it's having on the economy. So far, he likens it to being like a flip of the switch in a huge way in terms of national behaviour and the national psyche. He said it's quite dramatic. Buffett continued to say that the range of possibilities in what might play out is still extraordinarily wide. He really doesn't know what exactly happens when you shut down a substantial portion of your society. So here's my very short take on Buffett selling down airlines. Clearly, Buffett thinks that the current airline situation is going to get much worse over the next few years, and that his return on investment just doesn't justify holding this position any longer. And look, it should probably tell us something that Warren Buffett is willing to take a 50% loss on $9 or $10 billion, that the outlook must be pretty bleak in his mind. In the short life of this channel so far, we've already spoken about how Buffett is always on the hunt for great companies that are providing high income via owner returns. And that really just isn't going to come from any airlines anytime soon, if at all again, in my opinion. My gut feeling from watching this year's Berkshire Hathaway virtual AGM is that Buffett is secretly thinking that things are going to get much worse in the market and our economy. Now, of course, Buffett obviously has no intention of timing the market or trying to wait for that perfect entry point. But that doesn't mean that he's ignoring what's going on at the moment or that he isn't still waiting for the right opportunity at the right time. I think we can probably all take something away from the fact that Warren Buffett is still sitting on the sidelines with $137 billion worth of cash. Does that mean that I'm not going to keep dollar cost averaging into index funds or other positions that I'm interested in? No, of course not. But it does mean that clearly Warren Buffett thinks that there is obviously more to come off here, or that this just isn't the right time altogether to be buying. So this is where I kind of throw it back to you guys. Maybe you could let me know in the comments below what you think about Berkshire selling all of their airline positions, what you think might happen over the next couple of months in the market in general, and maybe what you think Warren Buffett's going to do next Do you think he's going to start buying, or maybe he actually already has started buying at the moment and just hasn't announced it yet? So I'd be interested in hearing what you guys think. So feel free to leave those comments below. Guys, keep in mind that just a couple of days ago, I did release a video that is covering the top 10 publicly listed stocks of Berkshire Hathaway, aka Warren Buffett. So feel free to click on this little link up here and that'll take you across to watch that video. My plan over the next couple of months is to make a few shorter form videos like these, covering things like the Berkshire AGM and any other breaking news that may have happened around that, and also any other market updates that might be going on at the time. If you guys are interested in that, please don't forget to subscribe and press the notification bell next to it and smash that like button. But anyway, thank you again. I appreciate you guys being here, and I'll see you next week.